עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה ותומכיה מאושר דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום.
Shalom. Our Torah portion for this week is Parshat Yitro, and it opens in the book of Exodus, chapter 18, verse 1, and it continues for a number of chapters. It gets its name from Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, who was a priest of Midian, a very wise man. And at the beginning of the Sedra, he gives Moses some very important advice about setting up a judicial system, a system of courts in Israel. And Moses accepts his advice, and this was a very important development in the history of our people. Now, perhaps the most important, the most noted part of this week's Torah portion is the Aseret Dibrot, or as it's known in Greek, the Decalogue. Many people call this passage, starting in chapter 20, verse 1, the Ten Commandments. That's kind of a misnomer, inasmuch as not all of the statements in this very important document, this very important passage, are actually commandments. Some of them are merely statements, or maybe I shouldn't say merely, but very importantly, statements. The Hebrew term for the Decalogue, or the Ten Commandments, is reflective of what they really are. Aseret Dibrot, we call this passage, which literally means the 10 statements. The first three commandments, and I'm going to read them to you in a moment from now. The first three commandments deal with the spiritual basis of that covenant that God established with the Jewish people. We were redeemed from Egypt, from the house of bondage, not just to be free people, but for the purpose of accepting this covenantal relationship with God. In this week's Torah portion, the Jewish people are standing at the foot of the mountain of God, Mount Sinai, and they will be receiving the Aseret Dibrot. These first three commandments speak mostly of how we are not to conceive of God. They tell us straight out that we are not to worship anything in heaven or anything on earth or in the water, that no material being, no material existence is worthy of our worship. And we have perhaps the single ritual commandment in the fourth commandment, which tells us to keep the Sabbath. Now notice that actually that fourth commandment is two commandments. It tells us to work. There is definitely a Jewish work ethic. It says 6 days you shall work, and on the seventh day you shall rest. In a sense, we are to emulate God, being creative and also standing back from our work. And then it tells us to honor our parents, and it goes on to give us a number of ethical and moral commandments upon which to base a civil society. Let me read you these 10 statements. The first is kind of a preamble, stating the reason why we should accept this covenant. It says, I, the Eternal, am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. And then it goes on to tell us to stay away from idols, from idolatry, worshiping stuff. You shall have no other gods besides me. You shall not make for yourself a sculptured image or any likeness of what is in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. And it goes on to say, you shall not swear falsely by the name of the Eternal your God. For the Eternal will not clear one who swears falsely by God's name. The way I read that one, it's saying don't use God's name to justify brutal deeds. The next commandment is the one about the Sabbath. It's the fourth commandment. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Eternal your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son, your daughter, your male or female slave, or your cattle, or the stranger who is within your settlements. For in 6 days the Eternal made heaven and earth and sea, and then rested on the seventh day. And therefore the Eternal blessed the Sabbath and hallowed it. Honor your mother and father, that you may long endure on the land that the Eternal your God is assigning you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And finally, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor male, nor female slave, nor his ox, or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's. This is the Aseret Dibrot, those 10 statements, the Decalogue. Now go study, read them this Sabbath, internalize them, and realize the great impact on human civilization that this group of statements in the Torah has had. Shabbat Shalom.